There are some stories in our tradition that we must know if we're going to fully understand not just who we are, but where we came from. Because where we came from informs who we are. Today's story from Genesis, the Old Testament, is one such story. So place it in time. 3000 BCE maybe? 2000 BCE? We're not really quite clear. Place it in the book of Genesis. It's chapter 15. So we've been through, in the beginning, God made the world and the first day, and all was good, and all that. And now we're entering into a part of the book of Genesis that's really meant to be a little more historical. It's not history in the way that we read history in school, but it is, these are real people who are really ancestors of people who are in a new generation. And they're telling the stories of the previous generation. So, what is important about this story, this Genesis 15, do you think? You've heard it before, maybe. Abram, you've heard of Abram. You may know him as... Thank you, Abraham. His name is in the Old Testament a lot of times. Once you have an experience of God, you are changed and your name becomes changed, right? So right at this point, it's Abram. He's been called out of the land of the Chaldeans in Ur and called down by God to go into a new land that God will give to Abram and his descendants. And Abram has said, okay, that sounds good. And God has made him the promise, really 3 promises. Do you remember? God has promised Abram descendants, land, and a blessing. And the blessing is so that Abram's people will bless the whole world. Through their knowledge of God, the world will come to know God. So, blessing, descendants, and land. And so far, Abram's like, I came all the way down here, like you said. It's been okay so far, but I got to tell you, the whole descendant thing is not working out exactly right. I don't have an heir, except for this one that wasn't exactly born in the traditional way. And so God says, look, you got to trust me on this. Just trust me on this. And then God does something extraordinary. God begins and ratifies, if you will, a contract or a covenant with Abram. It was a way of ratifying contracts in those days to take these animals and to cut them in half and lay the 2 halves open and then walk between the 2 halves. And basically it means, may the same thing happen to me if I break this covenant. If I break the covenant, may someone split me in half and lay me wide open. Now, if 2 people, let's say, Rick, I know you're in the landlord rental business. If you have a contract with a rentor, right? You sign it and they sign it. You both have obligations. But it would be unusual for you to go to these lengths as a landlord, yes? And say, listen, I'm making this covenant with you. I'm giving up a lot of my rights. If you think of any other contract that you're in, often it's a contract between equals, and if it's not, then the landlord or the person who has more authority and power does not give up more of themselves, rather requires more from the person who has less status, less power. You can kick your landlord out any time they don't pay rent. Yeah? God is saying, in this covenant, I'm not going to kick you out. In fact, I'm going to give up more and more of myself. I'm going to be in this covenant with you for the rest of all time. And you can trust me. And here's how you will know. Let's do the thing that you guys do. Let's lay those animals open. And instead of Abram walking through, God in the pot, the smoking pot, and the flaming torch passing through represents God Himself coming through and making the covenant. It's a critical part of our story that we must know. We inherit then this covenant of blessing and land and descendants as many as the stars in the sky, and God made the covenant. Do you think God is the kind of God who would break a covenant? No is the right answer. Excellent. If you said yes, that's the wrong answer. Yet no is the right answer. God is not the kind of God who will make a covenant and then break it. And that's what's important here. Now, that's 5,000 years ago, perhaps. And the covenant still is in force. And we are still part of it. That's what I want to talk about today. God has pledged God's own fidelity to us and to the covenant. And all Abraham need do is believe and trust and act. Right? Those children, those descendants didn't come through some sort of immaculate conception. Right? Abram had to trust. So, believe, trust, and act. And this acting and this trusting and this believing from Abraham and Sarai, or Abram and Sarai, or then Abraham and Sarah, that trusting and that believing, that acting is passed down through some now 5,000 years of people to us. And I was thinking this week, what contracts or what acts or what beliefs have been passed down to you from your ancestors, from your parents? What are the norms in your family? What are the values that your great-great-great-great-grandparents had that maybe got passed down to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation and the next generation that are still alive in you? Are there such things? I imagine that there are. I had a serendipitous thing happen this week. I was in Schuyler, Nebraska for a retreat, and to get back on the interstate to get home on Friday, you go to Central City from Schuyler, and then you have to take a left at this one intersection. And I didn't have my Siri on, and I was on the phone with my son Forrest, who was going through a bit of a crisis, and we're talking blah, 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 and I missed the turn. So pretty soon I'm 20 miles out, and I'm on not a dirt road, but it's a very small two-lane highway, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, now, and I'm going north instead of south. And I'm thinking, golly, should I turn around and go back and waste 20 more minutes? Or should I just, if I keep going west, sooner or later I'm going to get to Scottsbluff. So I go and I go and I go, and finally it's too much, I'm going too far out of my way, and I think I've got to go back. So I ended up driving back to a town called Silver Creek. Now, this makes no difference to you, it makes a difference to me. My mother's people come from that place, and I've never been there. And so it was sort of an anecdote. Oh, I'm going through Silver Creek, there you are. And then it said cemetery, this way. There was a little sign. And I drove past, I thought, someday I'm going to have to go back there and see the gravestone of my grandfather and my grandmother. And I got about a mile away, and I thought, when am I ever going to do that? Because if I'm with Jill walked out. If I'm with Jill and she's in the car and I said, let's stop here, she'd be like, no, you are not stopping. So I thought, I'm never going to have a chance. So I turned around, went back, went to the seminary, parked the car, went out, and it wasn't very big, but it wasn't big enough, and I walked up and down the aisle and finally found my grandparents and my great-grandparents' grave. And I sat there for a while. I'd never been there. And I talked to them a little bit, and I prayed a little bit, and I kissed their gravestones, and I thanked them, and I thought that was such serendipity because I would not otherwise have gone there had I not missed the turn. A long time ago, someone did something that set a new set of expectations in place for your family. And I want you to think about a little bit what those are, and have they been handed down? When did it happen? I have no idea. How long ago? How long ago was great? How many? I don't know. 100 years? 200 years? I don't know. I can just tell you it's a long time ago. The when is not as important. Even though when we study Scripture, when is all we care about. We fight. Oh, is it 2,000 years, 3,000 years? Go in the data, find it out. There's all these. Forget about when. What is the message? What happened? What was vowed? What was promised? What was believed? What became a part of our identity? What was the promise? Well, I don't know about your family, but I can tell you in your church, in your religious life, what you inherited was a promise that God would never leave you. that contract was never nullified and never broken. Whether you believe it or not, God believes it. And God will never leave you. God is with us. So fast forward now some 3,000 years to the New Testament. Jesus is doing his ministry. And he's pretty soon will be on his way to Jerusalem, where he will suffer and die. And as the Pharisees come to him and they say to him, hey, listen, don't go there because Herod's looking to kill you. And he says, that fox. You go tell that fox. He's not going to stop me. Nobody can stop me because I must be doing what God has called me to do. God is with me. And Jesus says, oh, listen, you guys, to his own disciples. I'm not a fox. I'm not a tricky, crafty, deceitful fox who destroys. I'm not about destruction. Neither is God. That's Herod. That's the world. Jesus says, according to our promise that's been handed down forever, I am part of a long promise of protection. I'm like a hen, not a fox. I'm like a hen. And how I wish I could gather you under my wings. Anybody here grow up on a farm? Anybody? What does a mother hen do when the storm starts? The mother hen goes around and with her very wings gathers the chicks to herself. That's what Jesus is saying. And it's, again, part of this long-standing promise from God. And it goes forward another 2,000 years after Jesus to today. When you were baptized into the church, you were included in the promise. You were grafted into this long line. Abraham, God, Jesus, the Apostle Paul, the martyrs of the church, the great mothers and fathers of our faith. You were grafted in. And the church, as flawed and as frail and as fragile as it is always and ever, whenever there's trouble, gathered together as a hen under the wings of Jesus Christ, because that was the promise. And whenever we feel that we are threatened or lost, just don't forget, we're in that promise, handed down for now some 5,000 years or more. God always had you in mind. Now, I can't leave it there because I want to challenge you this week. I was at a conference about giving and stewardship and money and church. And the person leading it said something that I wrote down and I don't think I will forget for a long time. The person leading it said, what has this generation done to further the mission of the church? It's so, I think, hard for us. Most of us here are boomers. Yeah? The world was our oyster. We could do anything we wanted, and really life has been pretty easy. The greatest generation, there's some of us here, you here, life was harder. Yeah? In my lifetime, I've known nothing but plenty and privilege, frankly. And we always get mad now at the kids. The Generation X and the millennials, we call them, and we say, all you care about is yourselves. And they're leaving the church, and they're not coming, and we throw up our hands. Here's my question for us. Somebody else built this building, 100 years ago. Go across the street, probably same thing. All around town. Somebody else built this thing. And my question for us, and my challenge for us is, what have we done? What is our generation doing? And let's lump us all together right now into one generation. What are we doing to further the mission of God? I know we're great consumers. We've built an amazing society in my lifetime of consumption. It's amazing. You can get anything you want. You don't even have to leave your house. Even Dr. John's had to close down. I saw this today. I had to go to Walmart. Even Dr. John's had to close down because you get all that stuff right at your house. Well, that's a sad little joke, isn't it? Huh? Oh, they moved? Let's see if we can close it down. We consume and we consume and we consume and we use up and we, and then we wonder what's going to happen after us. And here's my challenge then. What have you done to further the faith of your family? We complain that kids don't come to church, but are we setting expectations for them? What am I doing as a pastor? The bar is very low. If you come to church and if you can fog a mirror, you can get confirmed. I'm not sure that's what we want. What are we doing to make sure that we raise another generation of faithful Christians who do what they've been called to do, to change the world? What will we do to have and leave a lasting mark? And here's where I want to leave it today. I'm wide open. I'm open to suggestion. You come to me and you say, Mark, I've been thinking about this, and here's what I think we can do. I'm wide open. I'll help. I'll find the money. I'll show up at the meetings. I'll lead the charge. But we as a community have got to figure out what we are going to do in our generation that leaves something of value for the next generation. Not just an empty building and not just empty promises, but a true and lively and living faith and a hope. Our ancients have given this to us. God is faithful. Christ is present. What will we pass on to our families and to our community that reflects the covenant that we have with God?